and welcome to this week's episode of QTV. And have we got a great show lined up for you again this evening?
We'll be chatting with actor, writer, director Alistair Ward, whose play 20-something won the People's Choice Award at Melbourne Fringe this year.
We will visit Swinburne University and capture all the action of their recent Pride Day.
Trinity Grammar's Don Campbell talks about how his school is tackling historic sexual abuse of students.
And finally, our Moments in Time series is going to take a look at Gladys Moncrief, an amazing opera singer in the 1920s, in fact a superstar, and how she then retired to go and live on the Gold Coast with her girlfriend.
And all five here? Yes, wonderful. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. Thank you.
So we've sold out each day. Yeah, completely. Which is exciting. Director, writer, producer, and yes, performing. That is my mom. Being in our 20s is so fucking hard. Have a great job, move out, travel, have a purpose, be in a relationship. It's a lot.
Everything in the words is drawn from my life. Lots of things have been said by people or said by friends, and people recognize that. But the actual events of it was fiction.
I'm an actor, obviously. I studied overseas and have done some filming work at a bunch of different plays. New York, 3 years.
I remember going for a run because I thought, I don't know, I'm staying here, let's exercise. And then on the way home, I checked my phone and there was an email and it just said, you've been accepted. So I had to get all my visas and do all that stuff. And so I just told the world and then left a few weeks later. So my whole life changed completely. I'd kind of gone from someone who didn't know himself and still at the time didn't by the end. But work, I understood what I needed to put in.
Are you going to get a job anytime soon?
I think I have to.
Mate, it's been 6 months.
Yeah, I'm aware.
For me, my intention was to show people that all friendships can be the same. It doesn't matter the sexuality, it doesn't matter the gender. It's purely just two people who are friends, that one happens to be gay, one happens to be straight, and I want to show that, and show that they can just be just as wonderful and destructive and everything in between that.
What about acting?
What about it?
Shouldn't you be doing that?
It doesn't really work like that.
Sure, man.
Well, for a start, I don't really know that many people in the acting world because my entire community was overseas.
I was very much into the arts from a young age. I would always do the school choirs, I would always do the percussion and anything I could. All through primary school, all through high school, I was in the musical in Sydney in Year 7 in Footloose, and I was one of the only Year 7, 12-year-olds to get a part, and I had maybe 4 lines, but it was huge at the time. Each year I kind of did different forms of acting and different acting classes and things, even if I didn't. It never made sense to me that it would be a job. It was just what I loved, and it was what I enjoyed doing. I never thought of anything other than acting. Originally, I thought I'd be a singer on Australian Idol when I was a kid, because that's what you want to do. By the time I was 16, I knew I wanted to move to New York. I remember at school, I just told people, I'm like, I'm moving to New York one day.
How's acting going? I noticed you studied overseas.
Yeah, it's good. As an actor, you spend maybe 10% of the time acting, maybe 1 or 2 good jobs a year. Sometimes way more, but long stretches of time with literally nothing in between. You watch the people around you succeed and live their best lives and get good jobs and buy their first apartments, and you've got to remind yourself of the life you want to live and that none of that would work for you anyway.
I was born in the western suburbs near Penrith, or in Penrith. We moved to Castle Hill. I spent pretty much my entire childhood in Castle Hill with both my parents, and then they divorced, and we've been a single-parent family since I can remember, and it's the best thing in the whole world. For my mum to be her full, authentic self, she was better off without my dad, and then that also meant for my brother and I, without him there, we had the ability to be ourselves, be our best selves, and kind of grow more. We've just always been the 3 of us as a family, and we have such a strong parent and a parental figure, we don't really need another one. My mum got a job in Melbourne, and so she was like, should we move? And we just picked up our life and changed states.
I started coming out at 15, told about 40 people. At 16, I was at a party and I got outed. But it actually ended up being great because all the pressure was off.
I think it was year 11, or 2011, so that's 8 years ago now. I told, literally would just tell all the people I was close to one at a time. I'd just be sitting down, have that moment. And of course, it never occurred to me that everyone tells their best friend, who tells their best friend, who tells their best friend, because that's the way the world works. That's fine. Once I came out, it was that funny thing where my whole childhood I'd always wanted to be cool. I thought it was cool to be cool. And it was only until I stopped caring about being cool and was finally happy in myself when I was out and I was comfortable that then I was cool, because I knew everybody, everyone knew me. I was one of 2 gay people out in my year level. Once I came out, it kind of made sense why I was who I was the years before, because I'd tried to hide such a big part of myself for so long that by the time, once I came out, I could just be myself. So I was much more liked, I was much more cool in the sense, because I stopped trying to not be who I was. I remember in year 7, depression, and because I'd never experienced depression before, it was a huge thing, and I used to always think it was only about the moving. I thought it was just that seasonal almost depression, but it was really tough for a few. It kind of like the main depression was probably for 6 to 8 months, I think, but then the whole kind of experience of, I don't know, overlying depression was a couple of years. So I definitely, there was suicidal thoughts, there was enacting on little bits of that kind of stuff, but not too much, but very much aware of it would be easier not to be here because it's so hard, and it's hard because I don't fit in, because I don't have people, because I don't have friends. I remember a clear moment when for me my depression ended was we were walking along the beach and just talking about life and it's going to be okay, and then I looked up and an eagle just like flew above, and it was just that sense of I'm going to be okay, and I knew it then, even if I didn't know how and I didn't know why. I don't have a love life now, but it doesn't bother me because I'm very much comfortable with myself and who I am, and I don't feel that I need to add another person to that.
So how was the date? That's it.
I don't know. We kissed. You wanted me to stay at his, but like I said, I wasn't feeling it.
Dude, you blab on about not getting any dick, and then you find it, and you don't jump on it. I don't get it.
I don't sleep with every guy I meet.
Might make you happier if you did.
Oh, fuck it.
It's the kind of thing where I'm not really someone who needs to be in a relationship to fulfill myself or at all. And I'm very comfortable being single. I've always been single, so that's what I know. And of course, I've dated people over the time and over the years. But at this point, it's kind of that sense that I'm no longer looking. Like there were all those years as a teenager and older where you feel like you have to have someone to be that person, I guess, or to have another person. But now I understand who I am, so I very much feel very full in who I am. So it's like if the right person walks in, I want someone who's equal to me. I want someone who knows their worth and is and I don't know, is a full person as well. So that if they're going to come into my life is so full and busy and wonderful that I want them to come in and add to that. I don't need someone who's not full themselves.
I had no clue it would be this hard. Being in your 20s, everyone tells you what's going to happen, but nothing prepares you. I was shit scared half the time and I had no clue what I was doing. Of course, it looked like I was fine because I never reached out, showed anyone the real side of it all. And I don't want you to think I have all my shit together now. But I'm getting there. Slowly, but surely. Thank you for your time.
Coming up now, we have a look at the colour and excitement of Pride Day at Swinburne Uni.
I just need you to get real loose. Get comfortable.
So today is Swinburne Pride. Swinburne Pride is all about showing the pride that Swinburne has in its queer students, its queer faculty, and members of our community in general. Here we have the pride flag set up. The commonly seen rainbow flag. So this flag here is the bisexual pride flag, our asexual pride flag. Yeah, so this is the gender fluid flag, a romantic flag. Then we have our demisexual flag, our gender queer flag. Then we have our transsexual pride flag. This here is our intersex pride flag, pansexual pride flag, lesbian pride flag, and then we have our gender non-binary flag, have our agender pride flag. Campus Life is pretty awesome. The Queer Department runs many events. We're doing an open house showcase of the Queer Department here on campus. It's a physical space on campus in our AD building that is available to students who identify as queer and of course allies. It's a space where we can go on campus and know that we're going to be safe there.
Our student and staff cohort are becoming more diverse by gender, by cultural background and by sexuality. Tradespeople are proud people. They value pride in their work. They take great pride in developing those around them. At Swinburne, we add to this by encouraging pride in oneself and pride in being true to oneself. Pride's important at Swinburne because it acknowledges and recognises the many contributions of the LGBTI community in the fields of science and technology, innovation teaching, arts and humanities, and the higher education sector more broadly.
I am the very proud mother of Georgie Stone, a 19-year-old trans woman, winner of the 2018 Victorian Young Australian of the Year and the 2017 Young People's Human Rights Medal. And I'm proud to be mum to her twin brother, my very talented writer's son, Harry. From the moment she could articulate herself, close to 3 years of age, Georgie told me she was a girl. I'd given birth to twins, both assigned male at birth. But for Georgie, this assignment did not correspond with her sense of herself. After Georgie finished Year 12 last year, I began reflecting on our experiences. So I wrote a book called About a Girl, which is about my girl and catalogues those experiences.
Today is really about giving Swinburne staff and students a chance to come together to celebrate the diversity and strength of our own LGBTI community. It's a community made up of many people, each with their own views, their own stories, their own struggles and their own celebrations. The central theme of our Pride event this year is family and relationships. Families do come in all shapes and sizes, and it's important that we as our Swinburne community recognise this and provide an environment that's supportive of each other's differences.
So outside of campus, we tend to go to the Midsummer Carnival that happens each year, so we typically have a stall there. We're hoping to keep our involvement with that going and making it bigger, better, more queer. As well as that, we also go to Midsummer Pride.
next, we've got an interview with Professor Don Campbell on Joy's Saturday Magazine programme. And after that, we'll be taking a look at Gladys Moncrief, that amazing opera singer from the 1920s.
I brought an action against Trinity Grammar School. I was sexually abused there by a teacher in my early teens, and I brought an action against the school a couple of years ago, which we settled. The school, to their great credit, engaged with me when that had finished, after there'd been a bit of a change at the school council level, both of the chair and some other members, and I got to meet Don. And so I've been doing, for the last year or so, meeting regularly with Don and with John Gillam, the chair, and other members of the council, to actually put in place some procedures and some policies and some changes around how the school deals with historical child sexual abuse, but also how to stop it in the future. What I'm interested in, Don, is, you joined the council around that time, and how this issue, how it's impacted on you, what it's meant to you, what you've discovered, what you'd like to achieve, and the impact that it's had.
This was an unexpected gift that came when I joined the school council. Certainly hadn't anticipated that this would be an issue that we were dealing with, and to share with you and I guess your listeners that probably best if we don't mention names, but the person involved in the action that you brought was somebody that I had known very closely and admired very greatly in my time at the school, and this surfacing of the issue of child sexual abuse and this person's involvement in this came as a huge trauma, very big impact on my...
Did you initially believe it?
That's a really interesting question, and what I can say is I never doubted the veracity of the claims made by the person, and that person's identity was never known to me. And I really struggled to reconcile these two sides of the person. So, and two things happened to help me come to terms with that. Curiously enough, one of them was standing in a queue in a cafeteria at a conference that I was at and talking to the person next to me about this matter, and the person looked at me in such a way that I realised that this had to be true. They didn't say anything. Their look told me that I had to start from acceptance. I had not had non-acceptance, but I had really struggled with reconciling this, and then I consulted a friend of mine who's a psychiatrist that I've known for about 40 years, and my friend said to me in a very disarming way, "What do you know about my sex life?" And I said, "I know nothing about your sex life." And he said, "How do you know that I don't have an interest in interfering with young boys?" And I said, "Well, I don't know that." He said, "Well, if you did, would it change your view of me as a person?" And I said, "Well, yes, it would. It would." I said, "Well, you need to think about that." So that was how I worked my way through, and it was a serial process of coming to terms with the fact that somebody that I admired could be capable of, and therefore I had to reconsider. Every time this matter came up initially, it would take me 2 weeks to recover from dealing with it. We didn't know what we were doing, but we were committed to acting in the right way, and we learnt our way into it.
Give us a quick snapshot of what the school is going to be doing in the future and the role that you're going to play in that.
Okay, well, look, I think we're trying to work our way through four basic areas. The commitment to restorative justice and openness and honesty and being a model litigant, ensuring that we have a way of offering to persons who are affected by prior incidents, a way of getting to a health and well-being approach. So offering them access to that support, making the school safe, and that's an operational matter, so council will oversee it, but the school's operationally involved. And there's two other bits really, is there has to be a way of marking these events in our calendar, so a season of events, a recurring way of acknowledging this as part of our past.
Yes.
And also I think owning our story, being able to share in a community of practice with other schools, because the schools are doing it on their own and they're ashamed to talk about it. So how do we make it safe for the schools to share their learnings? And I'm going to expect that we will not stop people from seeking to have sexual relations with children. That's going to be so, and it's everywhere. We're not unique, but we have to own it. And we also have to share ways of making schools safe, making restorative justice to persons who have been affected, and making this something we can talk about.
Beginning in the 1920s, Gladys Moncrieff was one of Australia's most popular public performers. She was a singer of light opera and musicals mostly, renowned for her voice and her stage presence. She specialised in the kind of music that millions of people liked to listen to. Our Glad, she was called, both in the popular press, but also and especially amongst her fans, a group of young working class women called the Gallery Girls. The Gallery Girls would gather outside whatever theatre Gladys was performing in here in Melbourne's theatre district in order to welcome her and to get the cheap tickets in the gods, as it was said, from where they could watch her performance. In a testimonial that the Gallery Girls prepared for Gladys, they wrote, "No one on the modern stage has so completely won our admiration, our appreciation, and we are sure you will value this most of all, our love. Often enough, when she came on stage, there would be cascades of flowers, mauve and pink with the colours of the Gallery Girls, which had to be swept away before Gladys could come on stage herself." In 1924, she married a chorus boy, and although the relationship didn't last very long, he did stay as her manager for many, many years. The most important and most enduring relationship in her life was with Elsie Wilson, which began in the 1920s. Elsie had in fact been just another member of the Gallery Girls until they were introduced, after which they struck up a very great relationship which lasted for over 40 years until Gladys died in the 1970s. Elsie said that in the 46 years that they were together, they never had a single argument, although she did used to give Gladys a little kick on the shins before she went on stage. For good luck, she said. They retired together to Queensland in 1968, a fine old home where Elsie worked on the garden, creating a tropical paradise with hibiscus, exotic trees and the like, while Gladys took responsibility for entertaining large dinner parties where her specialty was an oyster pie that required 70 dozen oysters. It would not have been the done thing in those days to ask anybody about their relationship, and they never publicly discussed it. But in her memoir, Gladys referred to Elsie frequently, describing her as a friend and a companion in ways that indicated that they had in fact been together for a very long time. Even today, Wilson is often usually described in fact, as Gladys's friend or companion. But I think we can give them credit for more than that. Gladys died in 1976 and was outlived by Elsie by many years.
Wasn't Gladys Moncrieff an amazing character?
Absolutely.
And I love the story about the Gallery Girls that used to throw flowers at her performance. And the fact she ended up to retire and live with one of those fans must have been a beautiful ending to a magical career.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's our show for tonight. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to bringing you more QTV next week. Until then, take care and good night.
Good night.